Matt, the bishops in their pastoral letter said the following. Most of all, we need an honest account of how we must live in the future if generations yet to come are not to inherit a denuded and exhausted planet. Well, what exactly is the Labour Party planning to do about that if they get elected?
Well, the first thing to say is the Labour Party recognises and believes in global warming, because there are certain parties which, in what they've said, have said they've been sceptical about global warming. But the point is that human behaviour, especially carbon emissions, is responsible for the rise in temperature in this planet, and unless something is done about it, it will lead to irreparable environmental damage. And we're already seeing it, in Bewdley, for example. Bewdley has long had a problem with flooding, and there's been a couple of very devastating floods in the last few years, and the government and scientists have said that those are going to continue and get worse unless something is done about saving our planet. And the Labour Party, obviously, when it was last in power, they passed the first legally binding Act of Parliament, which basically commits Britain to reduce its carbon emissions dramatically over the next 2 decades. And an incoming Labour government will continue that good work. We've already said that we believe in the decarbonisation of the British economy, so moving away from fossil fuels. I think we've got a massive responsibility and a massive opportunity as well when it comes to renewables. I'm a massive believer in renewables. I think renewables don't only make environmental sense, they also make strategic sense. Obviously, unfortunately Europe is very dependent on gas and oil from Eastern Europe and from Russia, and that can put us in sometimes a very difficult position. So I think moving to greater use of renewables, which was pioneered under the last Labour government, is a way forward both environmentally and strategically. But also I believe this is a great opportunity when it comes to the British economy. One of the problems with the British economy is we rely too much on services, too much on financial services. One of the reasons we've had the economic problems. And we need to start manufacturing more again. We need to think making more things. And we can become pioneers in renewable energies. I think it's terrible that we put up all these, wind turbines, and that's absolutely brilliant. But many of those wind turbines are made in Denmark, they're made in Germany. We do have factories in Isle of Wight, for example. There is a company in Wyre Forest that is involved in renewables. And I think this could be a great area of opportunity for us in terms of building the turbines that will make Britain self-sufficient. I think an increasing amount of Britain's energy needs must be met by renewables. So we're going to get rid of the carbonisation of the economy. We're going to strengthen the Green Investment Bank that was set up, and that would be investing in green projects. So we made those commitments. The last Labour government was very committed to decarbonising the British economy, and that will carry on under a future Labour government as well.
Some people are saying that turbines aren't very efficient. They only work in some sorts of wind, and that we couldn't possibly sustain our use through.
Scotland. One of the arguments made by the Scottish National Party is they wanted to ensure that all of Scotland's needs are met. I think renewables actually, when you're starting new forms of energy up, they are initially expensive. It was the same with the nuclear power industry. The nuclear power has been subsidised for years. And it's the same with renewables. Sometimes you need that initial subsidies in order to get them up, because once you start producing them in large numbers, the cost falls. But renewables, there's a whole series of different things. For example, wind turbines might not blow all the time, but Britain's got a longer coastline than India. And the amount of tide power, if you look at the Severn Bore, you look at the Severn Estuary, there's enormous opportunities there for harnessing tidal power in that kind of area. In Scotland, you've got out in the North Sea, the wind blows pretty continuously, to be honest with you. So offshore arrays, those are very efficiently. Solar power in certain areas of the United Kingdom. So I think there's a whole series of ways in which renewables can be used throughout the UK as part of a mix. So you'll use that with some, more traditional power stations, but with, because the technology is always moving forward, you could now have, sort of clean coal, carbon, you can have coal burning power stations which are far cleaner than they used to be. And there is probably as well, and this is where we do disagree perhaps with the Green Party, I think there is a role for nuclear power actually. Nuclear power is part of the mix. I know some people don't like nuclear power because of its long-term economic damage. But again, you have a mixed portfolio of clean carbon capture, you have renewables and some use of nuclear power in order to make Britain far more environmentally friendly when it comes to its energy use.
Are we not just, as a consumer society that is quite inward-looking and individualist? Are we not really just too selfish for this? To be honest, most of us won't be here by the time it really all goes belly up. Maybe we just don't care about our great-grandchildren. Can we actually convince people to embrace alternative renewable energy, or are we just fighting a losing battle against people who don't want it in their backyard?
Well, if you think about it, the fact we're actually having this conversation just shows how much the environment has come onto our political agenda. I mean, if you went back 20 years to the early 1980s, environmentalism was seen as a kind of, it wasn't in any party manifesto. It was seen very much as a kind of, it was a fringe issue, and the fact it's in every single party manifesto. The fact is the Labour Party is a separate manifesto purely in the environment. The fact is the Green Party is, capturing votes, capturing seats. I think it shows that people are thinking far more about the environment than ever before. And again, this is where the government comes in. The state can actually come in and say, well, perhaps we should, rather than having, free, just a small thing, but free carrier bags. You go to Wales now, you have to pay for your carrier bags by law, and it's an attempt to encourage people not to see these things which are not going to sort of rot away for hundreds and hundreds of years, to actually think about their sort of carbon footprint and think about leading their lives. And so I think the fact the environment is being discussed, it's a big issue, just shows that people are thinking about the potential damage on the environment of their own actions, and I think we do need to think about it. I mean, not in my backyard. I mean, I know UKIP, for example, do believe that there shouldn't be wind turbines built on land. I personally believe, I think they're quite attractive things actually, to be honest with you. I would have no problem with having a wind turbine near me. I think I don't, some people sort of poo-poo them and say, well, they're not very efficient and they kill birds and all this kind of stuff. But in actual fact, they do work. They do work. And I'm very proud, actually, that Britain has been at the forefront of pioneering renewables. We generate more energy from wind farms than any other country in the world. I'm very, very proud of that. And it's only a pity that Britain should be making these things as well. So I think it's about educating people. I think it's about debating it. I welcome, the Green Party as, highlighting this as a particular issue. But all political parties now have an environmental manifesto and accept, with the exception of perhaps one party, that global warming is something that we have to do something about because it's real.
I was at the Centre for Alternative Technology a few years back, and somebody giving a talk commented that, if we're burying plastic bottles and we don't know what to do with them, that in a few generations' time they'll dig them up and they'll say, oh dear, idiots, but we know what to do with those, so not to worry. If there's no tiger or no polar bear, they're going to be an awful lot madder with us than with plastic bottles, aren't they?
But then this is the thing. What you're talking about. I mean, in terms of the polar bear, obviously one of the problems with that is global warming, getting rid of their environment and getting rid of their habitats, isn't it? Really. So this all comes together with, and I think the other thing that we say here is that Britain has to work with other countries because, of course, I think in this country we are far more aware than we were 10, 20 years ago of the damage to our environment from what we do. But we need to work now because the biggest polluting countries, I mean, it's no good if Britain, slashes its CO2 emissions, which we're planning to do, if countries like China, for example, and growing economies like Brazil or Russia or South Africa are then equally damaging the environment. And I think it's one of these things where we have to work with international partners to not to sort of limit China's economic growth, but to get the Chinese to understand that limiting their own CO2 emissions does help overall with the help of the whole world, basically. So it is again taking that issue seriously and working with other partners in order to reduce CO2 emissions throughout the globe, not just in this country.